Welcome to The Flirty Vegan, the podcast that motivates you to thrive through plant-based living. I'm your host, Jenny Chaffetz, certified life, breathwork, and vegan lifestyle coach. After decades of dieting and deprivation, I found the secret to living a compassionate, nourished life. Whether you've been vegan for years or you're just flirting with the idea, prepare to be inspired by real people who courageously chose health and love. It's time to look better, feel better, and do better. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Flirty Vegan Podcast. My name is Jenny Chaffetz. I'm your host, and I am so thrilled that you made it here, whether you are a longtime listener or you're here for the first time. It just means so much to me that you're here listening to these conversations, these messages that may or may not align with your current way of living, but I'm so glad you're here and open to receiving these messages. It would mean so much to me if you would take a minute out of your day to like, subscribe, or follow this show if you haven't already done so. Whatever platform you're on has a way to connect with this show so you get the new episodes every time they drop. And I would also love for you to give it a 5-star rating and a review or leave a comment on the episode. All of the ways that you can engage with this show help future listeners find it easier, which is so important to growing the audience of this show. There's a lot of podcasts out there. I know I listen to a good many of them. And there's an algorithm, guys, just like with everything. So the more you engage with this show helps this show become more recognizable. So I would really appreciate that. Back in late 2025, I decided to pivot this show into vegan stories. I had a vision. I was so excited to share all the many pathways to veganism and reasons behind people's choices for totally overhauling their lives. And I have been blessed that incredible people, some of them world famous, have taken time out of their busy lives and their busy mission work to come on this show and talk about their why, the passion behind what they do. And so whether you're intrigued by the health aspects of going plant-based or the environmental impact of our food choices, or whether you are a diehard animal lover who wants to live in congruence with those values, or for some other reason, maybe it's peer pressure, maybe it's economics, maybe it's social justice. There are a lot of routes to veganism, and I love that you get to hear from phenomenal people to learn what sparked them and has empowered them to continue on the journey, because that's really what it comes down to. Empowerment. Most vegans, at least the ones that I talk to, do not dwell on what they've taken out of their diet, but they're focused on what they've brought in. And for many of us, it's more nutrition. When we were eating the standard American diet, most of us were not doing our bodies a service with all of the animal products and ultra-processed packaged foods. So a lot of vegans talk about bringing in more nutrition, but also bringing in more love, empathy, compassion, and joy, and really more purpose. For me personally, there is nothing that I am missing, nothing that I feel deprived of, that I am so sad I can't have anymore, because frankly, there's a vegan version of everything. So if I do want junk food or something sweet, crunchy, salty, fried, it exists. You know, maybe some of you can relate to this. Back in my dieting days, I used to hear people say, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, which is really such a terrible expression when I think back on it. But how I would rephrase that to align with my current state and my current values is, nothing tastes as good as eating your ethics, an expression I've stolen from recent guest Lauren Ornelas. And it's so true. My food tastes even more exceptional because I know it is cruelty-free and loaded with mood and immunity boosting nutrients. So if you want to experience some of that for yourself, then please head to the show description and click on the link for a free connection call, an opportunity for us to chat about your goals, what's going on with your health, and what you'd like it to look like. And then I'll tell you how I can help, because I know I can. And on that note, let me tell you about today's distinguished guest, Dr. Neal Barnard. He is an adjunct professor of medicine at the George Washington University School of Medicine and president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine and Barnard Medical Center in Washington, D.C. He has led numerous research studies investigating the effects of diet on diabetes, body weight, hormonal symptoms, and chronic pain, including a groundbreaking NIH-funded study that paved the way for viewing type 2 diabetes as a potentially reversible condition for many patients. His most recent book, The Power Foods Diet, shows how certain foods influence the appetite and metabolism to facilitate weight control. When I first went vegan, I sought out podcasts that would support my new lifestyle. And the Exam Room, which is put out by the Physicians Committee, has been and continues to be one of the most important shows in my routine. So Dr. Barnard has been a voice in my ear for my 5.5-year vegan journey, and beyond his brilliance, beyond his experience and expertise in the field of nutrition and medicine, he is also an ethical vegan. You will hear him talk about his values and his childhood in this conversation. So with that, I bring you my interview with Dr. Neal Barnard. Okay, well, listeners, I am sitting across from a very important person in plant-based nutrition, but also an important person in my life, because when I went vegan 5.5 years ago, I immediately dove into podcasts. I was already an avid podcast listener. And so the first thing I did to get more support, more information, more validation was find a vegan focused podcast. And the first one I came upon was The Exam Room, which introduced me to the one and only Dr. Barnard. So with that, welcome to the Flirty Vegan.
Well, hi. It's great to be with you today, and thank you for including me.
Yeah, I have been devouring your podcast and just all things Physicians Committee, because it has been so instrumental in just keeping me informed. I don't need a reason to stay vegan because my reasons are ethical, but to really dive into the health aspects, you have been just a pillar of that information. So thank you for everything you put out. And now I want to get into this conversation. So I begin all of my podcasts by asking a very similar question. What I have learned about you from many, many hours of content is that you grew up on a farm in North Dakota, and you chose to go the traditional route of medical student education. So with that in mind, with that kind of sitting next to us, what attracted you, Dr. Barnard, to the vegan lifestyle?
Well, first of all, thank you for including me in the program. And what attracted me to the vegan lifestyle, this was not by choice. This was not something I'd planned. Because as you said, in North Dakota, and particularly at that time, you didn't hear of a vegetarian or a vegan or anything like that. And my extended family, about as far back as I could trace, was raising cattle. And I myself drove cattle to slaughter. I'm not proud of that, but I did. And I had a 20 gauge shotgun where my dad and I and my sibs would go in the fall, and we wait for the geese and the ducks to come out of Canada, and we'd blow them out of the sky. All kinds of things that were culturally normal, but when you stand away from them, it's maybe not the best use of one's time. But what hit me was the year before I went to medical school, I had a job in a hospital. I was in Minneapolis, and I had a job as a morgue attendant. That was, I think, what was on the door. But what I actually did was I assisted at autopsies. So somebody would die in the hospital, they'd be in the cooler. I'd go down there and I'd pull the body out and put the body on an examination slab. And the pathologist would come in, and he knew that I was going to go to medical school. So he wanted to make sure I saw every single detail of the examination. And one day there was a person who had died of a heart attack in the hospital. And I sometimes think that must have been because of eating hospital food. but it's another story. So he wanted to show me the heart, and he had to examine the heart. So you don't do this with great delicacy. He took what was like a garden clipper, and he went crunch through the ribs, and same on this side, crunch, 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 pulled the ribs off the chest, and that exposes the heart. And he said, look at this. And on the surface of the heart are arteries. They called coronary arteries because they crown the heart, and they carry blood into the heart muscle. And so he sliced it open and he said, poke around in there. I had gloves on. I felt this coronary artery, and you'd think it would be sort of a rubbery little tube because it's an artery. Well, it wasn't. It was like a pipe stem. It was calcified. And he said, bacon and eggs, that's cholesterol. It does that, and okay. Anyway, we then look at the carotids. The carotids go to the brain. And it's the same thing there. And this person was headed for a stroke, but the heart attack killed him first. And then we looked at the arteries going to the kidneys and the arteries to the legs, and they all had this process. And so he was dictating systemic atherosclerosis, da, 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 da. The patient died of a myocardial infarction. That means a heart attack. He left the room. He was done. Mm-hmm. So I'm left with his body. And so my job as the assistant is to clean up. So I put all the organs back in the chest. I put the ribs back. I tried to make them fit with the other ribs, and I sewed the skin up and put the body in the cooler. And it was afternoon. So I ran up to the cafeteria and I said, is there anything you have left? And what they had left was a plate of ribs. And I looked at this and you could smell it. Wow. And it smelled like the dead body. And I thought, it is a dead body. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And I didn't become a vegan on the spot. I wasn't pummeled by ethical thinking. I just had this visceral feeling, I am not going to eat that today. And it stuck with me. And as time went on, I started to associate meat with the smell of dead tissue. And then, you know what this is like in your own journey, where you put one foot toward plant-based organic, or one little ethical spark starts a fire in your brain, and pretty soon you start thinking, what about all the other issues? What about what the animals go through? What about the animals I killed myself? What about the environment? All these things, and you cannot stop those thoughts, because they're right. And so one thing led to another, and here I am. So.
Wow, that's amazing. Like I said, I've listened to a lot of interviews with you, and that is a story that I have not come upon. So thank you for sharing that here. And I do appreciate what you said about, duck hunting and things that I'm not proud of, but it's things that we've done, just as I had 45 years of ravenously eating animals as much as I could at every possible meal. And yeah, I just have to look back on that with compassion and understanding for who I was at that point and the information that I had, how I was raised. It was just the norm. Okay, so there's so many things I want to ask you. What direction do I want to go in? You know what? Let's just dive right into the carnivore conversation as we're talking about eating meat and not knowing any better. I encounter a lot of pushback, as I'm sure you do, with people saying, but this is healthy. This, I feel great. My weight's down. I just went to the lab and my numbers look great. Well, I've heard you say that the physicians committee will not do a study comparing anything with the carnivore diet because you view it as unethical to expose participants to that diet. Do you know of any other studies out there that would defend a carnivore diet?
Well, first of all, when people invent a word like that and they're promoting it and so forth, there is a little machismo that kind of leaks into the conversation. And years ago, I wrote a book called The Power of Your Plate. It's my first book. I wrote it around 1990. And as part of this book, I wanted to know about how did meat eating begin? Because obviously people are not naturally carnivores. We are great apes. We are cousins of chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, orangutans. Along with humans, those are the 5 great ape groups. Mm-hmm. And if you look at all the rest of them, they are not eating anything like the carnivore diet. They are not reading Men's Health. They're not doing any of that stuff. And they don't eat dairy at all. And if there is meat consumption by any of them, it's minimal. They're eating huge amounts of fruits and leaves and that kind of thing. So anyhow, For this book, I interviewed Jane Goodall, and we talked about what chimpanzees ate, and we could kind of model that. But then I interviewed Richard Leakey, who was one of the world's most famous paleoanthropologists. And I said to him, how did meat eating begin? How did people become carnivores? And he looked at me and said, Neal, we are not carnivores. We have never been carnivores. There is a reason that some human beings feel a need to go out with great guns and shoot species that could never do them any harm. But he said this has nothing to do with nutrition. This has all to do with men's desire to display and to look attractive to what they imagine a breeding female would want of them, and to intimidate competitive males. That was his answer. So I started thinking, well, there's some truth to that. That there's a thing among guys that they want to look more macho and, more strong and intimidating than other guys. And you see a lot of that in modern politics, I'm sorry to say. So no, you do not need meat. You're better off without it. And if studies show anything very clearly, it's that if you're a young person who's otherwise healthy, you can get away with eating some meat for a while, and you're probably not going to show any particular risk over the short run any more than you are if you could smoke 2 packs a day as a 16-year-old kid behind a garage on your way to school and all this kind of stuff, and you're not going to get lung cancer. Not now. Time is going to catch up with most people. And what we see is that a meat-based diet is strongly linked to cardiovascular disease, to certain forms of cancer, particularly the digestive cancers like colorectal cancer. And this is true for processed meats like hot dogs, sausage, bologna, but also unprocessed meat. It's linked to diabetes and other things. So these are all part of the problems. But the internet doesn't play to truth. It plays to curiosities. And that's really what we're talking about there. So we don't take that very seriously because most people following that are going to end up moving away from it at some point and get closer to a diet that they would do better with. But what does trouble me is the amount of kind of nonsense that is perpetuated by that kind of approach.
Yeah, so much nonsense.
Right.
I hear that. So in addition to mentioning, or maybe this is the answer to the question, but besides mentioning, okay, you might get cancer in the future, what have been your most successful arguments or claims for getting people to stop eating animal flesh and secretions?
Well, first of all, it's not my goal to try to get them to do anything. It's my
Okay.
goal. My goal, and I understand your question. When we work with people, if people want something, they want to get healthier, or they want to live long enough to see their grandkids, and so we provide those answers for them. It's not my job to push them necessarily, but except in the sense that you want to be a good coach for people and encourage them to not worry about kind of trivial things. People come in here we have a primary care clinic called the Barnard Medical Center, where people see us live and in person, or they see us by telemedicine. And in the Barnard Medical Center, probably half the people who come in have no idea that we do a big focus on nutrition. They just came because they got a urinary infection, or they came because they got sore joints. And so we end up talking with people about their other health issues. And so if a person wants to lose weight, or they want to tackle diabetes, or they want to get their cholesterol down or something like that, we talk to them about what a plant-based diet can do, and the fact it has 0 cholesterol. It helps get the fat out of your muscle and liver cells, all the health benefit. And then usually it takes about 90 seconds for a person to say, I think I want to give that a try. And the reason is people have tried everything else, and they see the logic to what we're doing. We explain how the diet works. At that point, the doctor's work is done, and then the dietitian takes over and says, okay, let's you and your reluctant spouse sit down together and let's figure out what you're going to eat. And then we go over a menu with them and think about foods that they might eat for breakfast and lunch and dinner, starting with the foods that they like now. And most people are not gourmet chefs, and they don't feel like cooking. So that's fine. So we'll figure out what they like to eat. And we come up with the things that are totally vegan and that they would like to eat. And we ask them to think about it for about a week and go shopping and try out some things. So this is their time when they never tried the Morning Star sausage. And so I'm going to go get it and see if I like it. Or I never tried soy milk. I wonder if it's any good. Let me try it. So they try it. Come back in a week. They've got a lot of options they found. And so at that point, then we jump in the deep end and we say, let's do it all the time. Let's do all vegan. Keep the fat low. 2, and let's talk by phone every week because you're going to have a problem or a question or you're not too sure what to do. And I'll answer your questions. And with that amount of support, people can do it. And after about 21 days, 2 things have happened. The first is they feel a lot better. They have lost weight. If they have diabetes, their blood sugars are coming down, their blood pressure is coming down, their energy is better, their digestion is working, their heartburn is gone. They can't believe it. But the other thing that happens is their tastes have changed. They thought they liked meat, they thought they wanted cheese, they haven't had it for 3 weeks, and they discover that they're drifting off and finding new foods, and they think, I want to keep this going. I want to see where I go. And of course, they can always go back, but we encourage them to just stick with it and see where they can lead. And what you'll notice is I did not do what 99% of doctors do, which is either ignore diet or meet the patient where they're at. They'll say, well, I want to meet the patient where they're at because they're nowhere near vegan. They're eating a terrible diet. So if they just eat 1 vegetable serving a week, I consider that a success. I consider that a failure. That you are doing nothing for that patient and they are going to have the same problems before. They will get 0 reward and they're not going to want to go forward. So what I do is I say, if we're going to learn to swim, take my hand, on the count of 3, we are jumping in the pool together. And you jump in and the water is cold for about a minute. And then you start to like it. And the person's swimming and they think, I am on top of the world. So we're going to go vegan right away. And my goal is to cure you now. If you've got a weight problem you haven't been able to deal with, if you've got diabetes that's making you crazy, if you've got hormonal symptoms like hot flashes through menopause, I want to cure you now. Because if we can do that, then you feel rewarded and you want to stick with it. But if we drag into it and the symptoms don't go away, you're not going to get any reward. So now, don't get me wrong. Not everybody is transformed 100% instantly. Everybody kind of gets the benefit in their own time. But I want you to feel it. I want you to see the changes. In the same way as a person at the gym, they're lifting weight. They say, hey, my muscles are forming. This is success. You want that same kind of feeling where my blood sugar is coming down. My medication doses are coming down. So that's what we do. And I would say maybe 1 in 10 people has trouble with it. The other 90% of people say, thank God, this works great.
That's amazing. I love what you said there about the meet them where they're at. I feel like that's about as buzzy as the idea of moderation, everything in moderation, which is something I slam up against all the time because I say, well, I don't know, do we do heroin in moderation? Do we shoplift in moderation? Not everything in moderation. And if you're going to keep putting what I've learned from you and others as these drugs, well, you can't just have a little cheese on the weekend every weekend.
Right.
You're not detoxing from it. So
You're also, yes, that's so important what you said. And the other piece of it is if you're having it every now and then, it's reawakening the desire for it.
right.
There is something beautiful about forgetting a bad relationship and just saying, I can't even remember that. And let me tell you something, cheese is a really bad relationship because it sucks you in and then it makes you fat and makes you feel terrible. And why did I do this? It does not love you back.
Yeah.
But moderation is a good word for good things. So let's say I got a 7-year-old daughter. She loves to play the violin. And after about 5 hours, I'm going to say, sweetie, you got to have dinner. She says, oh, I'm playing the violin, Dad. Like stop. Moderation.
Yeah.
She likes broccoli. She likes broccoli. Nothing but broccoli. Sweetheart, you got to have something other than broccoli. So moderation is good for good things. But for something that hurts you, you don't want it at all.
Right. I love that. I'm so glad you said that. And that will get pushed out as a clip, I'm sure. So you said something in that about other doctors having that, check mark of, okay, well, I at least got them to have some vegetables this week. Why do you think, or yeah, what have you found to be the compelling reasons that most traditional doctors resist nutrition-based interventions when there clearly is evidence to support them?
That's really a terrific question. It's sort of the $64,000 question of our medical system. But part of it is that they don't know much about nutrition themselves. And as Kim Williams, the great cardiologist, has often said, that the doctors die of the same disease that the patients die of, cardiovascular disease, because they're eating the same way. And so they don't have a knowledge base to transmit anything to the patient that's useful. Secondly, they don't know how to help a patient to change their diet. And they're going to say, I don't have 45 minutes to coach the patient. So I don't want to do it, and I don't have anybody on staff to do it. But my answer to that is, you don't have to do that. You're the doctor. If you were an orthopedic surgeon, you wouldn't say to me, but I don't have 45 minutes to do the physical therapy for the patient I replaced their knee. Well, of course not. That's what you hire the physical therapist for. You're the doctor. You need 90 seconds to look at their knee and say, okay, physical therapy for you. You are the doctor now, and you find a person who wants to lose weight and they want to get their blood sugar down. They got diabetes. You talk to them about a diet and you let them know what diet is going to work. A low-fat, plant-based diet. And now your work is done. Give them to the dietitian. She or he is the pro, and they know how to do it, and they will spend 45 minutes with them, the person, and they can do repeat visits. And then you just check up and say, how's it going? That is your job. We let all kinds of things get in the way. One real danger is that, unfortunately, a lot of doctors have this notion that a patient will comply with medicine. If I give you a prescription, I'm sure you'll take it. But if I tell you to follow a diet, you're not going to do it. There is no evidence really for that at all. First of all, patients don't necessarily continue with the prescription drugs. They throw their statins away a lot of the times. But people will follow a healthy diet if it's a good diet, if it works, if it gives them rewards, and if you recognize that the human animal, we goof up. Every patient that you counsel to quit smoking, which doctors will do now because they quit. And so they know, okay, you can do it. Every single patient quitting smoking goofs up. They go to a party, they lit up, oh, I'm so stupid. But after 10 tries, 12 tries, 15 tries, they stick with it. We don't give up on them. Every patient who had an alcohol problem, every patient who had a drug problem, every single one goofed up. You don't fire them, you don't get upset, you don't blame yourself. You realize that's human frailty. Okay, let's get back on the wagon, no judgment, come on back, let's do it. So a person, you're going to say, let's not eat cheese anymore. Oh my God, what do I do? They might goof up. Okay, love them back. Let's go from here. I'm going to do it with you. And you make sure that they have somebody they can call or a group session that they can join. Here we have Food for Life classes, and people can join for free or a nominal charge, whatever it is, and get their questions answered. And you got people loving you to help.
Yeah. I mean, that's my goal at the Flirty Vegan, is to
Yeah.
encourage people to explore this lifestyle with support. Obviously, it's not like, oh, let's go swimming for the first time and there's the diving board. Come on.
But people love it. As soon as they're in it with you, they realize I'm eating better with you than I was eating before. The foods that you are bringing to them are things that might have been new or whatever, but you soon fall in love. And this is what people really want.
Yeah. I'm amazed at the things
Yeah.
that my palate now appreciates that I
Right.
never did before. I mean, what I had for lunch, and it's so funny. I love telling people that I work with, there's this idea of eat the rainbow, which I get. I get all of the phytochemicals. I've learned all of it from you and Dr. Campbell and Dr. Esselstyn and Dr. Greger, all the greats. However, I am also a proponent of brown meals because I think there's a lot of good brown meals, like brown rice with seasoned tofu and mushrooms and hummus on top and tahini, which are in the beige to brown family, but still very nutritious. So I think that, and I never would have sat down to a meal that had tofu and mushrooms. I couldn't have imagined that for myself pre-vegan.
Yes, but there are a billion Asians who are thinking, what do you got against tofu?
Right.
So
Yeah, they're justified.
you'll hear a lot. You'll hear Americans, and when I was growing up in Fargo and whatnot, tofu. Oh my God. Just open your eyes a little bit to what the rest of the world has figured out, and give them just a minute. And you might also like curry, and you might like some of the other things that the world has to offer.
For sure. I apologize for interrupting this interview, but I am curious. Have you ever thought about going vegan? Maybe you heard someone talking about it or read an article online, but you're thinking it sounds way too restrictive, way too extreme, way too boring. Not to mention all those concerns about protein. I get it. I've been there myself. That is why I am a certified vegan health and lifestyle coach, and I am offering free coaching sessions to people who are in that hesitation phase, contemplating going forward, but definitely wanting help. That's where I come in. So please go to the show notes and click the link for free vegan lifestyle coaching session, and we'll get started. Now let's get back to the show. So you mentioned a moment ago about medication and, doctors prescribing it, most of the time patients taking it. Can I ask you to, I don't know, dig deep and share your thoughts on the GLP-1 craze
Yeah,
with respect to weight loss?
it's a funny phenomenon because it's there to counteract our habits. That's the whole point of it. It's there to counteract maladaptive habits at great expense. And if you were to go on YouTube and look for movies from the 1930s and look at the crowd scenes, and you see there's a lot of skinny people there walking around on the city streets, and you think, well, what happened? Were they all taking GLP-1s? No, they weren't. If you look at how much cheese people were eating, in 1909, when the USDA started tracking, the average American was not consuming the 40 pounds of cheese they're eating today per person per year. In 1909, when the USDA started tracking, it was 3.8 pounds of cheese per person per year, 3.8 pounds. And it started going up and up and up and up. And then in about the maybe 70s or 80s, pizza became a big thing. And what's pizza without cheese? And so the government intentionally, I don't want to sound paranoid, but it's true, unfortunately, that the government by law has to promote American agricultural products, and cheese happens to be one of them. And that helped cheese to become kind of the go-to food, especially for kids. And so your average person is eating 10 times more cheese now than they did, a century ago. And meat has gone up. All these foods have gone way, way up. And those have propelled us into obesity. And it has nothing to do with our genes. It all has to do with habits and culture. And that's something you can easily change without an injection or a pill. And regrettably, we are so subject to hype that people will take these drugs. And we don't use GLP-1s at all, but they will suppress appetite. They will cause weight loss in most people. Most people also have substantial side effects on them, which is why most people stop. And then if you continue, you will not get further benefit. You'll lose weight and you'll say, wow, that was amazing. And now can I quit? And the answer, your doctor will say, no, you can't quit. Well, why can't I quit? It cost me 15 grand a year. Well, because if you quit, you get all that weight back. And you say, what? I got to be spending money forever just to make sure that I don't get my old weight back? And what we do instead is we use a diet that has no animal products in it, keeps oils really low, but you eat as much as you want, as many portions as you want, as many calories, as whatever. We don't limit carbs either. And people lose weight about the same as with the GLP-1. Minus the cost and minus the side effects.
See, now I feel like I know a lot of people on them. I mean, I could walk into a holiday party, a barbecue, you name it, and I look around the room and most people have the, Ozempic face and skin and bones. And I don't know a lot of people who are paying a lot of money. I mean, I have friends who've told me, oh, my insurance covers it. It's $100 a month or $25 a month or something. And I'm blown away because I keep hearing that it's so expensive, but a lot of people aren't.
You're right. No, I mean, you're right. It is changing. When they came out a couple of years ago, it was $15,600 a year. And that was typical price.
Okay.
And most insurers would not pay for them for good reason, because you're just hemorrhaging money to Novo Nordisk. But some of them are paying, and I got to tell you that the insurers don't do this charitably. They raise everybody else's premium.
For sure.
And so if your employer is looking at the insurance costs, or you yourself are looking for your premiums, that's where the costs go.
You're exactly right.
It's not as if you're not paying for it, or Medicare is paying.
I'm paying for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're paying for it if you're in either in their insurance group, or if you're paying taxes, your Medicare rates are covering it as well. And it's really, really unfortunate. And I don't want to say that there may not be a case where there's a role for them, but we don't use them at all. And for the most part, you're simply just dealing with it's a drug that changes human behavior that can be changed easily in other ways.
And you said you have a massive success rate when you point people toward the whole food plant-based diet. So why would you need to use them?
Right. And to be clear, what is a plant-based diet? It's avoid animal products, keep oils low, eat anything you want, basically within those parameters. Do take vitamin B12 because you need it as a supplement. And people need a little support, at least at the beginning, so they can figure out what to eat and what to do when you go to a party or when you travel. And then you'll sort out those things, and then you'll be really glad you did it. So,
For sure. Now, I think you alluded to this as well, and I try not to sound like a conspiracy theorist and anti-traditional medicine, although it sometimes
right.
spits out. Do you, in your vision of all visions, see a world where hospitals only serve healthy food, do not have fast food chains on the ground floor, and doctors push plants over prescriptions and procedures?
It shouldn't be hard to envision that world. When I was a medical student and a resident, and I would go into my hospital, the George Washington University Hospital here in Washington, we sold cigarettes in
Hmm.
the gift shop. And well, the gift shop sold them. We bought them.
Yeah.
We, the medical students and residents, and we would smoke. And we weren't stupid. I mean, we knew that smoking caused cancer, but we figured, well, I could probably get away with it for a couple of years. I'm under so much stress now, I'll quit later. And it was in the probably mid 80s that hospitals came to a reckoning. And they said, wait a sec, this is a hospital. When people are here, this is a teachable moment. And they cleaned out. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of upset at the time from staff, some patients, and whatever. But that's where we need to be with food. And I want to thank my friends at the AMA, the American Medical Association. They passed a resolution, I think in 2017, 2018, something like that, saying hospitals should serve plant-based meals. I mean, they might serve other things too, but they should make
Sure.
plant-based vegan meals available. They should never serve bacon, sausage, or any other processed meat to anybody, not to the patients, visitors, or their own staff. And they should serve healthful foods. So that's a big step in the right direction. And the way to view hospitalization, in my view, is it's a place to protect you and let you heal from whatever it is that you're dealing with and to give you the treatments you need. But it's also a chance to take advantage of the time when you are reflecting on your health more than at
Sure.
any other time of your life, and to support you in eating in a better way and getting on to better habits. So your care team will sit down with you and your family and say, what are we going to do? Let's make a menu. Here's a recipe book. Take this home. And there are hospitals that are starting to do this kind of thing. We're not where we need to be, but it would A, save money, B, save the life of the patient in many cases. But probably more important than anything else, it would break the chain where from parent to child to grandchild, we hand down bad habits. We could stop that, and we could stop that. And the hospitals have a big responsibility to help that process.
Yeah, it just seems like most people I know live in the philosophy of we will get something. I will get something. That's just part of life. That,
Right.
look at the statistics of 1 in 3 get what, cancer, 1 in 2 heart disease, or I might be mixing, and I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but do you think everyone has to get something?
Um, you're not going to live forever. And just like your car eventually is going to run into trouble, no matter how well you take care of yourself, something's going to happen. But what I would like to have happen is to get off this view of life where, okay, now that I'm in my 20s, I should start gaining some unwanted weight. And when I'm 30, my blood pressure should start to be up. And, my doctor might start to talk to me about, my blood sugar. And when I'm 40, my joints will hurt. And your life is this downward trend. I would rather have what I call a box-shaped life where you are feeling fine at 20, at 30, at 40, at 50. At 60, you're still laced up your sneakers and running your 5K. And then, sometime, at least in my life, what I'm hoping will happen is maybe when I'm 90 years old, I will die in a fiery inferno in the Monaco Grand Prix or something like that. So you have a box-shaped life. Live to the fullest and then exit gracefully and leave it at that.
Oh my gosh, I
No,
love
you can't.
that.
No, don't get me wrong. I mean, you can't control everything. The body has a lot wrong with it. I mean, the human body is not a perfect design, if you ask me. So you could be doing pretty well and still have something happen to you. That can happen, and there are genetic things that can occur. But what we want to do is to take into our hands the power that we do have, so that we can live well and be with our loved ones and not have to worry about these health issues to the extent that we can.
All right, I love that. All right, so going on the same plan of your future vision, I know Dr. Clapper is out there promoting changes in the medical school instruction. If you could revamp what future doctors are learning, both what to include and what to cut out, what would that look like?
It's a good question. Doctors do need to learn about nutrition, and recently RFK Jr. did throw down a challenge saying that medical schools should offer 40 hours of nutrition instruction to every medical student, and that's a good thought. The limit of that thought, though, is 40 hours of what? Because there's all kinds of nutrition. And registered dietitians have way more than 40 hours of nutrition education, but most of those graduating from RD programs do not fulfill our criteria for competence. Because if I ask them to help a patient transition into a low-fat vegan diet, they don't really know how to answer the questions. So what matters is what you actually are taught. And the way we frame it is there's not an enormous number of things that you need to know, but you do need to know what is the dietary approach to the things that affect people the most. So most people have concerns about weight issues, and they kind of hammer themselves with unhelpful ways to try to lose weight. So to get people on a more effective and gentle approach to that is just a matter of knowing the principles. So we know those principles, you put them to work, and then you have to know how to help a patient to change in a real easy way. And then the top killers of Americans are number one, heart disease, number two, cancer. Beyond that, you're worried about stroke, diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. Nutrition plays a big role in all those. Once you know what those factors are, you can help patients to understand them. So it has to be practically focused. What students don't need to do is memorize all the names of the vitamins and all the names of the amino acids so they can pass the test. No. I mean, most of that's not really what's really important.
Well, let's hope we see some changes in that field in our lifetimes.
We already are. I mean, there are medical schools that are doing better. At the University of Miami, Akash Patel is a senior medical student now who has introduced a completely plant-based nutrition curriculum in the school, and the students love it. So there are bright spots.
Wow. All right. So, for the listeners of this show who may or may not be facing some sort of medical devastation, what would you say to, I know you're not in the business of forcing a plant-based diet on anyone, but what would you say to the listeners who aren't coming to you because they have a medical problem, but they're just listening to this conversation? What would you say to get them to entertain moving toward a whole food plant-based diet?
There really are a couple of reasons why a person might want to do it. And for most, just despite what you were saying in the sentence, in the introductory sentence to this thought, people do have health issues.
Well, I was going to say they don't know that they are facing something.
Or they didn't think that it could affect them. Like, yeah, I'm 15 pounds overweight, but my whole family is 15 pounds overweight. Okay, well, what if I wasn't? Oh, well, that'd be nice. So oftentimes people um, can deal with a health issue that they thought they couldn't. If it's not a present health issue, it may be a future one. In my family, there's dementia in my grandparents and my parents, and I think, man, that is at the top of the list of things I don't want to have. And if you thought it was just genetics and age, you're missing the fact that to a great degree, this is controllable, or at least we know what the factors are that seem to lead to it. And so we want to put those factors to work. The other reason that people come to it, apart from tackling a health issue, which is the biggest motivator, I think, the other one is when people, well, maybe a couple of others. Sometimes people really like the food. When there are folks who, when I was a kid, Fargo, North Dakota was not the center of haute cuisine. We did not fancy ourselves to be Paris. But on Main Avenue in Fargo, North Dakota, when I was in high school, was a restaurant called the Mexican Village. And if you open their menu, they had the item that all of us teenagers ran down there to get. It was the jalapeno burrito. It was baked in a 600-degree oven, and it came out with this tortilla wrapped around refried beans and a gravy on top that was completely vegan. I don't think they knew the word vegan, but some reason that's what it was. And they would put as many jalapenos in it as a person could possibly withstand. And if you asked for cheese, you'd get cheese. If you didn't want cheese, you wouldn't have it. That was it. Without the cheese, it was vegan. And we just thought this was fabulous. And somebody along the line probably told us that jalapenos are rich in vitamin J. I'm not sure what they meant by that. But anyway, It was great. So anyway, the point I'm making is that sometimes the vegan foods are the tastiest thing on the whole menu, and that's what we found. The third thing, though, I do have to say that for many people, at some point in their life, they hear something like in Korea, people eat dogs.
Yeah.
And then they turn to their friend, and their friend says, yeah, but look at you. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, you eat a chicken or a cow, or what's the difference? And if you put a couple of neurons together, you start, and if you look at how the animal gets to the plate, cruelty is intrinsic to every single livestock operation, including the ones run by my family. And we don't like to think it. We don't like to believe it. We like to imagine that, in my life, I mean, I would look at the rodeo and all these things, this is just part of it. And if you look at those tapes again and think about what those animals are going through, and if you have half a heart and half a brain, you will realize that we are so prone to let our aggression take over and be rationalized. A chicken lives 6 weeks, hatching to slaughter. That's how long it takes for them to become obese. During that period of time, they are absolutely miserable, and Americans eat 1 million of them every hour. And you think, wait, is this humanity at its best? When people have an individual experience with an animal, seeing that animal die, or seeing that animal get born, or whatever it is, very often you think, I don't want that to happen to anybody else. Whatever that suffering was, I don't want that to happen to anybody else. And they decide they don't want to hurt animals. And I don't think that's a majority that comes to that, but a great many people do come to realize they don't want to perpetuate animal suffering. And that is a great, great motivation, because your coronary arteries don't care why you changed. If you change because you feel sorry for the calf, or the cow, or the pig, your coronary arteries are thrilled. And people who go to a plant-based diet live longer, live healthier, live slimmer, live more energetic, and you get your reward.
I think that's so important, that someone of your status and knowledge and expertise to be able to blend the scientific medical information with awareness of the cruelty and the importance of compassion. And as I've heard you say, and other doctors, the idea of doing no harm, why would that not extend to all creatures as opposed to just the patient in your exam room?
Men in particular are a little reluctant to show their tender side, because they are afraid that other men will think less of them and they won't do their job. A man's job is to intimidate all the guys around him. And so if you show yourself to be a little bit tender, people are nervous to do that. So people are reluctant to talk about compassion. However, I was in a lecture with William Castelli, who was the director of the Framingham Heart Study for a long period of time. Brilliant, brilliant health expert, and he focused on cardiovascular health. And partway through his lecture, he said, we Americans go through life killing the cows, and then they kill us. And I thought, you're absolutely right. So luckily, I have to say, in the work that we do here at the Physicians Committee, we do focus a lot on ethical issues in research and so forth. And ethics has to be at the foundation of medicine. Hippocrates said, first, do no harm. And when you think about ways that we can apply it, it allows you to be stronger than what you were otherwise, to comport yourself ethically in your food choices, or in your medical practice, or anything else.
It's funny what you say about men and machismo. All of us women just want the men in our lives to be more tender and compassionate. So I wish they would just pick up the pace a little bit and figure out this is how you get there.
Yes, but keep in mind, men aren't making their choices necessarily for women in their lives. Men are, and Freud said this, that there are two drives for humanity. One is sex, one is aggression. And that sounds funny, but what he meant is our species, we have coded in our DNA the blueprints that allow our species to survive. And we will survive if we squeeze out competitors, that's aggression, and if we reproduce, and then our DNA will perpetuate itself. It sounds really cold, but I think he was right. And so for a lot of people, much of what they're doing is not necessarily to attract a member of the opposite sex, but much of what they're doing is to intimidate members of their own sex, to win breeding rights for themselves. So when you see guys at the gym and they've got plenty of muscles already, and you think, what are you trying to do? You're not going to have to lift up something heavy now. I don't mean to put down bodybuilders. I mean, it's an okay thing, but what people
Sure,
are often
sure.
trying to do is to impress or intimidate other guys. And it's not something to feel ashamed of. That's just what guys do. It's built into our DNA. And so a guy does not want, I've experienced this myself in my own life. My brother Scott and his wife Ann came down here to DC when I was a medical student. And they wanted to go into the Smithsonian. And they said, Neal, will you hold on to our dogs while we're inside? I said, sure. Well, their dogs were named Puff and Powder. They were little white poodles with bows in their hair. And I thought, oh, God, this is not my image of myself with these cutesy little dogs. So even I in my own life realized that the desire to be a macho guy is something that's kind of built into your DNA. But as time goes on, you realize just what you said, that compassion is a much better thing to share with anybody in your life. And when you can let go aggression, when you can let go the competitiveness that we see, when we can let go all of these things that are so malignant now in our policies now that we see in our international relations and all over the place. If we'd had a little more fiber in our diet, we'd behave a whole lot better.
Yeah, we'd feel better, maybe sleep better. Oh, okay. So, here we go. So you've spent decades, I'm not trying to age you here, but you have spent
Right.
decades advocating for plant-based nutrition, helping patients, and I'm sure encountering a lot of opposition. How have you taken care of your own mental well-being so that you don't burn out or feel defeated?
Oh, there's no reason to burn out. There's no reason to feel defeated, because resistance is normal. People should have resistance, and it's just what you deal with. People shouldn't believe any old thing. There's a lot of nonsense in the world of food and nutrition and supplements and all over the internet. There's just a lot of nonsense out there. So people come in here to the Barnard Medical Center, or they join one of our studies here at the Physicians Committee. I expect them to be resistant. I think they should. Say, why am I doing this? Don't I need meat? Don't I need protein? Da, 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 da. Those are good questions. And so all we do is we kind of bring out the owner's manual, so to speak, and say, here's how we're going to do it. And then people come to understand it. So no, resistance is a good thing. And we just work with it.
Okay. But still, as someone who has worked for a number of years and, you're fighting City Hall, going to Congress, doing
Right.
all the other aspects of doctoring, how do you balance work and just your personal well-being? What do you do?
Um, well, I guess I'd say a couple things. I mean, I'm a human being, so I have all kinds of hobbies, and I read, and I have a rock band I play with, and I put out records and all that kind of stuff.
That's that right, like every other doctor. Okay.
You haven't seen my band. It's called Carbon Works. If you go to YouTube and you look at our channel, it's We Are Carbon. These are our works. The band is called Carbon Works, and you'll see a million videos of really cool music.
All
And
right.
so my pals and I will unleash some music every now and then. But with regard to professional endeavors, there was, I think, a really good lesson written after World War I, when the world had just survived the worst war it had ever had up until that point.
Right.
It was 1918, the war was over. The League of Nations was getting started as a way to stop this from happening again. And one of the founders of the League of Nations was asked, are you optimistic that we'll get anywhere? And he said, I'm not optimistic, and I'm not pessimistic. I'm determined. So don't feel a need to predict, and don't feel a need to be optimistic, and don't wallow in pessimism. Set your path, set your strategy, pursue it. So what do we do at the Physicians Committee? We educate people, we provide information, we write books, we give people a pathway to better health. They turn back and say, thank you, this is working. And then we say, well, share this with other people. That's what you're doing with this podcast, is you are taking a rock and throwing it into this pond, and the ripples go out to reach people you have never even met. What's to be depressed about? That's our job. And so we do that every single day, and it's a beautiful thing.
Wow. I love that. So speaking of Physicians Committee and all the things that you just mentioned that you're doing, what, if anything, is in the future plan for Physicians Committee? Anything that you haven't done that you hope to see it do?
Well, we work on many fronts. We do clinical research trials. We're doing a huge study right now with people with diabetes over the long run to see if their medical care costs quantifiably diminish, which I think they do. There are many more studies that we need to do to prove what a plant-based diet will do, and how to do it in a scaled up way. At the Barnard Medical Center, we are now working on transitioning from one-to-one patient care, which we still will do, but sometimes we get 20 or 30 patients who want to work together as a group and get healthy and conquer emotional eating, conquer diabetes, conquer weight issues as a group with group support. And it is amazing to get that energy together. So we're exploring new ways of delivering care that allow us to tackle these things in a bigger way. We do have to work with the federal government, both in the US and abroad, because they get lobbied a lot by the purveyors of unhealthful products. And so we need to counterbalance that. So those are all things that we have to work on in the future.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll make sure to include all the links so everyone can follow along on that journey. And so, again, wrapping up here, if someone listening is not yet following a whole food plant-based diet, but they're now intrigued, now that we've got the, seal of approval from Dr. Barnard, where specifically would you tell them to start? What are the first things that you would want them to do?
I guess everybody's different. For some people, my welcome mat is a book. My most recent book is called The Power Foods Diet, and it's the front of it is so pretty. It looks like food porn, I have to say.
It's great. Yeah.
And well, the credit for that goes to Dustin Harder, who did the food photography, and Dustin and Lindsay S. Nixon are great recipe developers. So it's just a joy to work with the team. So if a person likes food and like recipes, or they want to lose weight, sometimes that will be their way in. Or they're on Amazon looking at my other books, and they might be worried about a food seduction they can't break away from. They'll find something. So for many people, that's, it's sort of find what is your need that we can help you to satisfy. And as I said, for most people, they do have a health issue that they want some benefit from. And for funsies, you're all going to go out to eat. So think international and go see what you can have at an Indian restaurant, a Latin American restaurant, a Japanese restaurant. Look what the plant-based dishes are that the whole world figured out thousands of years ago, and you can now get in the city that you're in. So the fun part of it shouldn't be lost either.
So good. That book is so good. I often don't read the beginning of a cookbook, but that one was must-read information for sure.
Well, it was fun because it capitalized on what Harvard researchers did, is that they showed foods that actually do cause people to lose weight. And we thought, wow, let's make muffins out of them. So that's what we did. Yeah.
So, okay, speaking of foods that cause weight loss or help initiate that, have you put in any of your books or online your own version of the jalapeno burrito?
Yeah, I think we did. We have a series called Best in the World, and there's these tiny little gift books. They're really tiny, and you can give them away to people. And I think the Mexican Village's jalapeno burrito is in there. And for my friends at Fargo, the Mexican Village is no longer on Main Avenue. It's moved south, but it's still there. So tell them Dr. Barnard sent you. Get a number 2 jalapeno burrito for me. And next time I'm in Fargo, I'm going to be there and I'm going to join you.
That's so good. All right. Well, before I get to the final question, is there anywhere you want to direct the listeners to get more information, more other than the links that I'll provide? Is there anything that you want them to seek out?
Well, I'm sure you'll direct people to PCRM.org. That's our website for our medical center. It's barnardmedical.org. My books are all on Amazon. And the only thing I would ask of you is don't keep it. If you get it, give it to somebody who needs it more than you.
Oh, that is such a lovely sentiment to share. And so my final question to all of my guests is, would you please share with the audience some of your favorite things to eat?
I already gave you my jalapeno burrito.
Yes.
I do have to say, when I was a kid growing up, there were no Asian restaurants in town. There just wasn't anything. So somewhere along the line, I fell in love with Japanese food. And very often in the evening, I want something light. So it might be like miso soup, a little salad, maybe either a lettuce salad or a seaweed salad, and then maybe a cucumber roll or a sweet potato roll or an asparagus roll. So it's sushi, except no fish. And a little wasabi and a little pickled ginger. and I feel like I've done my body some good.
Right? People don't realize how good you can feel not eating animal products.
Sure, you bet.
Well, Dr. Barnard, this was such a treat. I'm eternally grateful to you and all the work that you're doing and for taking the time to share your wisdom with this audience.
Well, it's been fun talking with you today. Thanks so much.
Wasn't that an amazing conversation? I mean, it's not every day that you get to hear from a brilliant physician who also has deep-rooted ethics and compassion. Now let's get into the juicy bits. Number one, just because something is culturally normal doesn't mean it's healthy, a good use of our time, or even ethical. Number two, people are not naturally carnivores. Our closest relatives are apes, and they don't eat meat. Number three, young people eating meat won't exhibit signs of disease yet. Time will catch up, and science shows that meat-based diets are strongly linked to cardiovascular disease, colorectal cancer, and diabetes. Number four, plant-based diets have no cholesterol. They get the fat out of muscle and liver cells, helping people lose weight, lower blood sugar, lower blood pressure, increase energy, and have better digestion. Number five, Dr. Barnard believes it's not okay to meet a patient where they're at because that won't help them and they won't see the rewards. Number six, having something in moderation or every once in a while isn't the best idea because it reawakens the desire and doesn't allow the body to detox. So moderation is a good word for good things, but for something that hurts the body, you don't want to have it at all. Number seven, traditional doctors don't know nutrition, and doctors are dying of the same diseases their patients are dying of. Number eight, GLP-1 medications are there to counteract maladaptive habits at a great expense. And that expense is both physical with side effects as well as financial. And you might know someone who's getting their GLP-1 at a very low cost, but that's because everyone else's premiums and Medicare taxes are paying for them. Number nine, in 1909, the average American ate 3.8 pounds of cheese per year. Today, the average American is eating 40 pounds of cheese per year, which has propelled the obesity epidemic. So it's clear that obesity is more so connected to habits than genetics. Number 10, we hand down bad habits generationally and need to stop. And hospitals have a big responsibility in that process. Number 11, the top 5 most devastating and worrisome diseases are heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. And nutrition plays a big role in all of them, which is empowering. Just because family members may have had the same problem doesn't mean you will. Number 12, cruelty is intrinsic to every livestock operation. So if you think it's awful that they eat dog in Korea, well, it's no different to eat chicken and cow in America. We let our aggression be rationalized. And to add one more bit to that, chickens only get to live 6 weeks from birth to slaughter. And in America, people are eating 1 million chickens per hour every single day. Number 13, people on a plant-based diet live longer, healthier, slimmer, and more energetic lives. Number 14, if you're thinking of starting a plant-based diet, Dr. Barnard recommends finding a good book, and he's written many of them, and also going out for ethnic foods and seeing the many options. And speaking of options, number 15, Dr. Barnard's favorite vegan foods include the jalapeno burrito and sushi, where you can get miso soup, a salad, and lots of vegetable rolls. So I hope you enjoyed this wonderful conversation with a legend in the plant-based nutrition world. Be sure to check the show notes for so many relevant links, including a link to book a free call with me to get your plant-based journey, your vegan journey started. And I'll see you right back here in 2 weeks for my conversation with 2 incredible people, Danielle and Josh Hanish, who together started an animal sanctuary and a really special program to educate children and invite them into the world of compassion and caring for animals. So thank you for being here. I hope you'll share this episode with friends and loved ones who care about their health and want to live long, strong, vibrant lives. And as always, it is with a heart full of gratitude and a fridge full of veggies that I wish you peace, love, and chickpeas. Mwah!